Coming to paperback and e-readers from SJS Direct, Isis, House of Isis, the goddess next door takes on a hustling Hotep high priestess in Harlem in this Afrocentric Isis series adventure. Pre-order Isis, House of Isis on Amazon.com today. About a year ago, I made a video talking about how SJW comic creators want to turn the comic book industry into the new teaching. And I talked about my childhood experiences dealing with people who decided they just were going to become teachers because they could not go out here and find a career with the college degrees that they had in things like anthropology, women's studies, and other majors that usually most employers have a hard time trying to place someone with. And when I take a look at many of these SJW comic creators, this is what they want to do. They want to come into the comic book industry because they can't find jobs anyplace else, and they want to come here and collect checks until 20 years pass and they believe they can get some sort of retirement package. And what SJWs really see the comic book industry as is some sort of corporate welfare. And they believe they are entitled to this corporate welfare because here is a big corporation that is making billions of dollars. And because this company is making billions of dollars, they can afford to pay them a small salary so that they can sit here and do the minimum amount of work and make money at the company's expense. They are no different than those teachers back in the 1970s and the 1980s who came to public schools and destroyed the entire public school system. Because when those teachers came in, they really were not passionate about teaching. They really didn't care about the students, and they didn't care about the quality of their work. And thanks to their apathy and indifference, what happened is many kids wound up falling through the cracks, and many kids wound up dropping out of school. Unfortunately, many of these people cannot get into teaching now because many states have raised their requirements for teaching, and they have stringent standards as related to teaching. And the comic book industry, because it's run by a lot of beta males, does not have any standards, and this is why your SJWs can slip into the comic book industry and collect corporate welfare at the expense of a corporate conglomerate like Disney. When it comes down to these corporate conglomerates, they don't really see the big picture as it relates to the SJW. And they don't see how this parasite is just looking for a host to suck on until it gets enough nourishment and then moves on to the next host. And the reason why we have these parasites here is because they can't enter other industries because other industries have leaders in charge of them, and those leaders have high standards for the people who work for them. And because they have high standards, they have standards for professionalism, they have standards for conduct, they have standards for meeting the content that they produce. And when they take a look at a company like Marvel Comics, there is no standard. The same thing with many of the indies like Image and even DC Comics to a point. There is no standard, and that's why these SJWs find themselves infesting these companies because these companies just don't have a strong enough leadership to set a high standard for things. And this is why it's important to have the right kind of person in charge as the editor-in-chief. You need someone with what I call an alpha male personality because that person is going to set a high standard and they're going to insist that a high standard be maintained for the products that are produced and the content that is published almost every month at a company like Marvel Comics. And because they're demanding a high standard for things, the SJW has no place to hide, and they have no place to make excuses, and they have no time to sit on social media arguing with customers and acting unprofessionally because that editor-in-chief is going to hold those people to the same standard they would be held to because they want to make sure that the quality of their products is consistent. Because when it comes down to the SJW, they don't see Marvel Comics as a business. No, they see it, again, as corporate welfare that they believe they are entitled to. And because they believe they are entitled to this corporate welfare, they believe this company should just pay them because they are a woman, a minority, or they have left leaning beliefs. And those are not qualifications for any job. Your qualification for a job should be, as Diversity in Comics has stated in many of his videos, based on merit and experience. So if you are a writer who has gone out here and has published books and has written runs of comics, that would be the standard you would be judged by. And you would be judged by the content that you put on the page of that comic or the page of a book, not your politics and your political beliefs. And this is the standard that I hold myself to as the publisher of SJS Direct. I hold myself to the standard of what's on the page is the most important thing, and the content of what's on the page, not the color of a person's skin, not the ethnicity that they have, not the political beliefs that they have. It is all about the content on the page. It's the same standard that a chef like Gordon Ramsay would have at his restaurants, where he would make sure that it's about what's on the plate, not about the ethnicity of the chef or the politics of the chef, because what sells to the customer in the restaurant is the same thing that sells to the customer at the comic book store, the quality of the product presented. And that's what you're judged by when you go to a comic book store or if you go to Amazon.com. You are judged by the standard of the products you produce. And this is not the standard I see as related to many of these SJW comic creators. Many of these SJW comic creators, their standard is I have a certain political belief, but when we look at your writing, it's absolutely terrible. When we look at your art, it's extremely uninspired, has no focus, has no sense of art direction, and it is of poor quality. And when we look at the editing, we see numerous errors and numerous continuity errors, and it shows us there is no standard for quality and that these people don't really care about the products they produce. And no business should have someone there who does not care about the products. A person who does not care about the products should not be in that business. And a person who does not care enough to maintain a standard for a product is not a person who should be in a business, because that person is going to have a lot of negative energy and they're going to suck the energy out of a business. People who come to a business should know that if you come into this business, you are expected to perform to a certain standard. You are expected to meet a certain standard, and you are expected to work to meet a certain level of quality. For a company that is a part of a billion-dollar conglomerate like Disney, to have Marvel Comics producing comic books that are of poorer quality than many self-published books I have seen is an embarrassment. And for these SJW creators to sit there and think that their products are top quality because they have a Marvel logo on them shows me how dysfunctional they are, because that Marvel logo should mean something. It should mean high quality. It should mean high standards. It should mean that this product is the best, one of the best comics on the market. Because if Marvel is the health of the industry, then the Marvel brand should be of the highest quality. When I take a look at comics and they are of a level lower than many self-published comic books I have seen, that is an embarrassment to the Marvel Comics brand, and that shows me that the people who are working there don't really care about anything outside of getting a paycheck. And if they want to go get a paycheck and want to work in comics, then I urge them to go work for themselves and see how much these comic books actually cost to make. Because as a publisher myself, I know how much these books cost to make, and that's why I make every effort to make my books the highest quality, because I want to try to build a high quality brand, and I want my customers to know that I make every effort to make my books the best quality it can be. If a small guy like me can go out and make that type of effort, then I ask the question, why can't any of these SJW creators make that type of effort? Because for them to sit there in a multi-billion-dollar corporation and produce inferior quality comics, that is a huge shame. If you can sit there and make products like this and think that you're just doing this because you want to get a paycheck, you really, again, do not need to be in this industry. Because if you're going to be in this industry, then you need to come with your A game and you need to bring your very best to the table. And this is one of the things that the SJW creators don't do because they feel entitled to their jobs. They feel they deserve to have them because they are trying to stick it to Disney and Marvel Comics. And what they're doing is sticking customers with poor quality comics and poor quality content and thinking that people are just supposed to accept it because it has a Marvel label on it. And that's highly unprofessional and it's extremely disrespectful to all of those Marvel customers. When it comes down to SJS Direct, I believe my customers deserve the very best, and I make every effort, again, to give them the very best. And that should be the standard at Marvel Comics, and it should be the standard for anyone who wants to work at Marvel Comics. And when I look at the SJW creators, they really show me they don't have any standards. And the reason why they don't have any standards is because the beta males at the top in editorial don't want to impose any standards on them. And as I see it, they desperately need someone who is going to take the lead at this company and establish a high standard for quality, the same standard that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby established over 50 years ago, a standard that turned Marvel Comics from a small publishing company into one of the biggest brands as related to comic books and superheroes. If you'd like to try some of my SJS Direct publications like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, The Temptation of John Haynes, and the Spinsterella trilogy, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com. And if you want to help me pay for the covers for the SJS Direct 2018 catalog, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.